Big microphone here. Thank you very much. On behalf of the People's Progressive Party, I wish to extend season greetings to all Guyanese. I hope everyone in Guyana would have an enjoyable holiday season, particularly Christmas. We can expect next week a slew of press conferences from the government and the ministers outlining the progress in their sectors and how they're working to implement the promises made by the People's Progressive Party when it contested the elections in 2020. We hold sacred those promises, and notwithstanding the unnecessary distractions that sometimes come our way, and the criticisms, many of which are unjustified, that are leveled against us, we remain focused on what we promised the people of this country. And we're committed to ensuring that we deliver on them. This party has a tradition of keeping its promises. When we put those down in a program before we contest elections, we believe they have to be fulfilled. If you contrast our promises with those made by the APNU, you will see that our promises are fulfilled. APNU had a disastrous period in government in the past, and then again in the 2015 to 2020 era, where most of the promises they made to the people of this country were not kept. And that is one of the reasons why they lost power. Not only were the promises not kept, but we had a period of retrogression in national development. And today, although it may not be visible to many one because we have a very short memory in this country, our country moved backwards in those 5 years. And so when I see them leveling criticisms at the government, I'm surprised that they would do so with a clear conscience. Let's give our colleagues from the Kaichor News a chance to come in and settle. So we saw job losses on the APNU, massive loss of jobs. So can you imagine today they're in good conscience talking about employment opportunities and not enough of those for people? We saw a decline in disposable income because of the taxes that were placed on people, and also many of the social benefits that were there under the PPP, they were withdrawn. And so today we have to, I'm getting an urgent buzzing, yes. There's something that's coming up. So I may have to step out for a minute to take that, but today I want to return to the theme that we will have a series of press conferences by the ministers next week to outline what's in their sector, and then you can question them about the progress and the manifesto promises. We are also currently engaged in, apart from what has happened so far, we are currently engaged in the preparation for the 2024 budget. You will see an early budget in 2024. The President, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, spoke about two elements of the budget, our macro views on the budget. One about the continuation of the build-out of the economic and social infrastructure of the country to enhance future growth and to bring greater comfort to our people. That is on health and education and all those other sectors, as well as the economic infrastructure of the country that will trigger future growth. And then he spoke about the enhancement of disposable income. Now, disposable income can come from several ways. It can be through increased salaries, reduction of taxes, more people being employed, and all of these measures would be catered for in the 2024 budget. So you can expand employment and get more disposable income at the gross level. That is national level, because more people are working. So those would be two key elements of the budget. They're macro elements, they're goal-related elements, and they're consistent with our manifesto. But they would find themselves reflected through a series of projects and policies and programs that will be enshrined in the budget. But you can look out for that goal. That is to keep our country safer, to keep it vibrant, to keep the social and economic investments going, to generate more jobs, to create more income for people through various means. These would all be part of the budget next year. And so we're busy working at these measures. Now, we have, last week has been the past week has been a pretty easy week in terms of media, in the sense that you have a few recurring issues that have come up. Nothing new in the media cycle. And so for a while now, I've not looked at headlines and their implications for the country. And today I want to do so a bit, because for those who may just come to Guyana or who are reading a newspaper for the first time, they may think these are new issues. Those of us who have been here in Guyana for a while and have been familiar with what's going on, they would recognize that they're just a rehash. So, Kiteshore News, I wanted today to spend a bit of time on this newspaper. Now, having demonstrated clearly the publisher and the politician, Mr. Glenn Lal, has demonstrated his unpatriotic approaches to the Venezuela border issue, for which I want to thank all of the Guyanese who, by the force of their criticism, drew him back from that dangerous precipice where he was taking the Venezuelan side, almost on the border controversy that we have with Venezuela. He was taking their side through his newspaper and articles published in the newspaper that almost seem to be pushing a Venezuelan line. Thankfully, good sense prevailed, and that course of action was diverted. So we're not going to expect him at any time in the near future to continue to be patriotic, because he believes he was forced to go back to the sane middle on that matter. But he continues to distort and to rehash things that have been dealt with before. So everyone knows that. So one headline: 108 billion in taxes to oil companies, and the government only injected 13 billion in disposable income in the economy through higher wages. Last week I dealt with that and about how taxes are levied. In this, I want to repeat again for the people who are serious about this matter. They can go back to my comments last week and see that almost all companies in Guyana in the manufacturing sector, in mining, and in tourism, almost all the productive sectors of the economy, agriculture included, they enjoy fiscal concessions. They get waivers on machinery and equipment. They get waivers on buildings. They get waiver on things that they often bring in for their operations. Not just oil and gas companies. In the oil and gas, in the case of ExxonMobil, the 2016 agreement accorded them a set of concessions. It's not new concessions that are being awarded every year or new waivers of taxes every year. But by virtue of that agreement, they got some concessions when they're bringing equipment that or for example, other capital goods, and in some cases even for the recurrent sector, they get waivers. And so this waiver here that you see in taxes is a consequence of the 2016 agreement. But I went through again about the same Kaichor News seeking to get the tax waivers for the printing press they are bringing in. Everyone does this if you talk about manufacturing. And the idea is if you don't give tax waivers, every country in the world does it, will you have the economic activity? Would you still have economic growth in the country? In a country that's capital starved, because don't allow anyone to fool you that the total investable capital in this country is a fraction of what we spend on a single FPSO. On a single FPSO. And that's the total investable capital from the public and private sector in this country. So you can have the economic activity or not. So it is a false, fake story that seems to be, they bring it up over and over again as though it's new, without explaining the full implication of it. And to make it seem as though on an annual basis, the government is just giving out concessions on one hand and not taking care of the public sector workers. There are two different things. One, for you to have income to pay wages and salaries, you also have to have a source of income. And the source of income often comes from investment. So if you don't have the investment, you don't have a source of income, and therefore your ability to finance wages and salaries, high increases, etc. That's common sense. It doesn't require you to have an economic degree. It's common sense. Everyone knows that, except Kiteshow News. But they have this false narrative that surfaces every day. So the second headline, government pushing ahead with gas strategy, but no clear plan to prevent more multi-billion losses to Exxon. That feeds off from the first headline, $108 billion in losses. Not that these are waiver of taxes without which you probably wouldn't have had the investment. But the gas strategy, it is clear what we're about. We want to monetize the gas in the country. The gas will be monetized under a different fiscal regime. We have already reformed the PSA, and this can only bring greater benefits and more revenue to the country. It has nothing to do with the current production of oil, because right now Exxon does not want to monetize the gas. It prefers to re-inject the gas into the wells, claiming that it will help to maintain the quality of the reservoirs. It does not want to monetize this gas. We, on the other hand, we believe that there's great value to the country and to our people. By monetizing this gas, we can get billions of dollars more of revenue from doing so, rather than it being re-injected. And gas is now universally recognized as a transitional fuel. So again, another fake, false headline that doesn't think through the issue. Oil-rich Guyana cannot afford more than 6.5 pay increase to public servants. Jagdeo. That's another headline. Last week, I explained it at length about forecasting, planning, how you plan a budget, how you plan a business, how you plan your family even. You can't spend more than you have. You can't spend all that you have on a single item. You can't spend all you have on a single child if you have 5 children. You can't not fix the roof of your home, but spend everything only on food and clothing. It's like running a home. And that is what some people think we must do. That we must take all of this money and just every cent that we collect in revenue and spend it out. Give massive increases to the public servants, although public servants, as valuable the service they provide, and they do provide a valuable service to our country, there are 54,000 people. We have 800,000. They have to be taken care of too. And many of them are your families and public servants' families. We have to take care of people's health and education. We have to make sure that the country is fixed up, infrastructure, just like the home, like when you manage a home. Just imagine you take every cent of your salary and just go out and shop one day. That is the philosophy, the mentality of it that we're trying to break away from. We've seen many countries do that with oil money, and where are they today? They're collapsed. Venezuela, many countries in Asia and Africa. They splurge on every cent. Then you have to also think about future income. They want us to spend now on future income when the future income may not go. That is like you spending on a pay increase you hope to have. You're starting to spend the money now. Because what if the oil prices tank? As there's a real possibility that that could happen in the future. but you're already locked into these high expenditures of a recurrent nature. How many times do we have to explain this to sensible people? But that goes out the window. As I said, people don't relate it back to their family. When you run your own business or your own family, you can't do this if you hope to progress. You have to save some of the money, as we are doing now, for the future through the Natural Resources Fund. Some is spent on infrastructure, but not to make more people live in greater comfort. The roads in the communities, the highways, etc. Some is spent on health and other education, on security, on ensuring that we have more jobs. Some is spent on our children, on our pensioners, on people with disability, on our public servants. That is where the oil resources are going. We have to spend more now on defense, ensuring that we grow our capability to protect this country. So the headline scream, we can't afford more than 6.5%, but 6.5% is thought out. It happens on a recurrent basis, and we now, in this year's revenue, we have to take care of all the salary increases which have accumulated in the past on this year's revenue. Because you can't say, okay, it's only 6.5. It's the 7% or 8% last year and all of that accumulated. We have explained this again. I've seen a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, the fringes and everyone else. Now I can understand public servants. I would want more salary increase too. Everybody wants more. And I understand that. It's not something that we don't understand. But in the long run, it's counterproductive. It's less than inflation. We've tamed inflation too. It's significantly less than inflation. That means that the disposable income has grown. We've reduced the tax environment. That means disposable income has grown in that regard too. So, another headline, and this week, as I said before, World Bank report. As Guyana increases oil production yearly, citizens depend more on overseas relative to financial help. So this is a World Bank report on remittances. Now, our figures don't match these. These are best estimates coming from the World Bank, because when we look at our BOP, our figures, the balance of payment figures, they differ significantly from those of the World Bank report, which are estimates. However, if the same story has this written, remittances are one of the few sources of private external finance that are expected to grow in the coming decade. This must be leveraged for private capital mobilization to support development finance, especially via diaspora bonds. This is the lead economist and the lead author of the report. Now, if somebody who wrote this story understood what this guy was saying, what he is effectively saying is that the remittances is a source of private external finance. So when the report says, I show news story that the World Bank report has shown from 2019 to 2023 that remittances have grown. It's not money for people to eat, like financial help to their families because of poverty. It is a source of external private finance, which the guy is speaking about here. That people now are seeing more business opportunities here when they remit money to the country They're not remitting it to their relatives to eat. They're remitting money often as an investment in the country. And we've seen a serious growth from our diaspora in investments in the country. In apartment buildings, I can tell you about 15 people who have come to me who are now building 5, 6 apartments for rental. They remit the money to the country for capital purposes, for investment purposes. They should be happy with this. This is seen, oh, look how we are an oil-rich country now, and more remittances, so people are getting more, have to beg more for money to eat. That's the tenor of the story. They miss the whole point, and if they had only read their own story, you would have seen that the explanation is right there in their own story. But again, truth is not what the Kaichor News is looking for. And it's very dangerous when people are writing these things without understanding anything, without any regard to sensibility or even an in-depth thought, or even a shallow thought would have identified this. So, another headline, people are still suffering although we have oil, red thread. And then they follow this with an editorial in the Kaichor News, Women Know. Now the red thread is a vile organization that surfaces only to excuse the PNC. It surfaces in the opposition. Everybody knows that they're partisan. But when have we claimed that people are still poverty ended because we started producing oil? That's our end goal. We've just started producing oil. So far, we have received $1.7 billion we've brought into the budget from the oil and gas sector. That's a fraction of the total budget. Since when did we claim that poverty has ended because we started producing oil? If these people had any sense to put that, a headline like that, or to issue a statement like that, all they had to do was to look at Venezuela. After producing oil for 100 years, they're poorer today than when probably at that time. They don't have food. Look at many countries. So oil and the production of oil is not the end of poverty. It's how you utilize the money. And many of these countries utilize the money in the same manner that Kaichor News and APNU and some others want us to do that. That's why they're poor today. They splurge. They never thought that you'd have peaks and troughs in the oil market. They never plan for the long-term non-oil growth in the economy. That is what we are trying to avoid. And this is why. So this is, again, another headline which is nonsensical from this. Then another one, VP either reckless or couldn't care less by allowing this to happen. Lal Bachan Ram wrote this, Christopher Ram, Lal Bachan Ram. He's come out after he made some vile statements at the University of Guyana and got recorded. He surfaced again. And listen to what he said. Ram said that, in other words, the government is putting up 50% of the exploration investment, equal to the combined investment of Exxon, Hess, and Sinopec. I don't know about that. And I'm in government. I don't know where we have put in 50% of the exploration money, which runs into billions of dollars, because not a cent of that is financed from the Treasury or from a loan. So I don't know where that is coming from. He's conflating that with our 100% of the investments have to come from the investors. Our share of the profits is 50%. This is after all the costs have been taken care of. Our share of the profits, 50%. That's two different things. He says we're putting in 50% of the exploration investment. If we had to do that, we would have had to find billions of dollars to put in. We're not putting in any money. All the risks are with the investors. If these assets, because of net zero, become stranded, not a cent of that debt belongs to the government and the people of Guyana. They're on the books of this company. They're not a cent. We don't have to pay back a single cent of it. So they were talking about the ring fencing. We made it clear that I'm reckless because I don't want to ring fence the fifth project or whatever. If the lack of ring fencing in the Stabroek block is by virtue of the Stabroek agreement. How many times do we explain that? But this guy, he wants to grab a headline and then again deals with Kaichor News. So again, it's another fake, false kind of approach to this matter. I should continue. So what they can't do through the headlines are done now through some other things, like, well, the usual vile stuff. So the Jagdeo touch. This is peeping Tom now. So I've already, you know my views on these peeping Toms and stuff, that they are the biggest cowards in the country. They are afraid to put their names to their article. They're scared. They write anonymously so they can say whatever they want. They're the cowards of Guyana. So they can, say whatever they wish, and then nobody knows who they are. We know a few of them. So again, this peeping Tom talks about, how resurrecting the PPP failed plan that President Ali has done this for food, energy, and climate security. So the Amila's fall was, they said that Norconsult found that the project cannot supply Guyana with total emissions-free electricity. Now, everyone knows that the Norconsult report came about after APNU blocked this project from taking place, and they were complicit in this with the Kaichor News. The Kaichor News used to run articles like there $2 billion of debt, when all there was a $750 million of contingent liability. That is meant that if GPL didn't pay for power, the government would have had to pay because we were buying power. But a zero debt on our books. Kaichor News, if you go back to that period, ran hundreds of articles literally, quoting Clive Thomas and everybody else that you would have $2 billion of debt. A lie. Lie number one. Lie number two is that the river will run dry in dry season. But that's obvious, the area. That's why you build a reservoir. And this is a risk, a hydrology risk for hydropowers all around the world. And we pointed out that in the peak low season, you were going to get about 750,000 million gigawatt hours, and then in the peak seasons, you were going to get even much, 1.4, I think, 1,400. It was a range, a big range, but even at the lowest end, we were getting power at that time at 10 cents per kilowatt hour when the cost of generation was 20 cents per kilowatt hour. We pointed all of this out. a bunch of lies about the project. They killed it. So Norway, we said that they should have a study done. We're out of office now in 2016, and Norway decided through Norconsult to hire Norconsult to relook at their Mile Fall. And listen, Kaichor said that their finding was the project cannot supply Guyana with total emission-free electricity. A lie. Imagine you can lie on a report that is in the public domain. The conclusion of the Norconsult report is that a Mile's Fall is the best option for Guyana, the best option for renewable energy for Guyana. The report is in the public domain. You can read it. Imagine 20th of December 2023, the Kaichor News would lie on this through the peeping Tom, called the Jagdeo touch. Secondly, so they listened to me last week and they said, they're talking about climate finance now and everything else. The past week, the Vice President in an interview with Newsroom was complaining about his disappointment with COP28, but this has become par for course with him. He would recall that Copenhagen, on which he was hedging a great deal of hopes, also ended up being a disappointment in his ambitions to garner billions in climate funds for Guyana. The fact of the matter is that we're the only country that signed up a deal before Copenhagen. So the outcome at Copenhagen didn't really affect us, although we argued for a positive outcome. We were the country, many people were saying, wait until Copenhagen to sign the agreement with Norway, the bilateral agreement for $250 million. Based on our assessment, we knew that there was a potential risk that the market-based mechanism for forests will not proceed. We signed our agreement for $250 million. Now we're still using today to put in solar, 30-something megawatts of solar in Linden and Berbice and Essequibo that APNU used the money for, although they tried to block it. It came because of our foresight. We signed our agreement before Copenhagen. And that is why we had the largest at that time per capita bilateral deal in the world. Only one other country Brazil had $1 billion, but their population is 100 and maybe 200 times ours. They got $1 billion and they didn't get all disbursed. They didn't get maybe more than $300-400 million disbursed. We got $220 million of US dollars of that disbursed to Ghana. Because APNU screwed up, we probably would have gotten the full 250. So it was a success because of our foresight, but they saw it as a failure. So the fact of the matter is that questions are arising about the carbon credit schemes of countries with high for it. Let me cut it short. Little progress was also made in terms of a bilateral mechanism for trade in carbon credits. Despite being present at COP28, he could not turn the tide. They think I'm Superman or something. These people really gotta... You have 200 countries in the room who have to agree, if they understand what COP is, that every country has to agree to every language before it enters as text into the framework agreement. Not one country. So, again, I pointed out last week that although we didn't move forward there, we are the only country that now has a deal that would potentially already yield $750 million, and the biggest in the world, and would yield potential $2.5 billion, regardless of no movement at COP28, one of the few countries in the world. They should do that. But I think they're mixing up, their person is mixing. But the math is now being questioned, and this is why carbon market credits are not likely to be a major part of compliance markets anytime soon. Carbon credits are already a part of compliance markets. You have several compliance markets. I think they need to say forest carbon. Forest carbon, they're not carbon credits. That's already, you have robust trading arrangements globally. So again, it makes it looks erudite and seemingly sensible. A whole article talking nonsense. Pure, adulterated nonsense. But vile because they want to cuss Jagdeo touch here. So it goes on in the same Kaichor news. I see GHK Lal now saying, oh, Exim Bank, the 2 billion, Ashni Singh had to meet with them. No one else met with them because we're not making progress on it with Exim Bank. Well, I did meet with the vice president of Exim Bank. We had a great meeting. Exim Bank is fully on board with this project. We have had a technical team come and done an assessment on the project because that's how banks work. This Wall Street analyst doesn't seem to know much about it, GHK Lal. And by the way, to him it's not. He said, I noticed that the 2 billion Exim Bank understanding of loan is almost 18 months old, right? So basically saying, why then is the 2 billion going from month to month without being credited to Guyana's account? Now, we didn't ask to borrow $2 billion. So he has it wrong here again. The president of Exim Bank offered a $2 billion line of credit to Guyana. We're not seeking to borrow $2 billion. That's where he has it wrong. They're not going to take the $2 billion and credit it to our account tomorrow. We didn't ask for that, nor did they offer to credit it to our account. They said it's a line of credit. That's one. And two, where the gas to energy project is about $760 million, and we have already made public, we have financed $100 million US from our treasury. So the loan is for $660 million. We had a great meeting with the vice president of the bank. They have said to me, we had a dinner with the ambassador, they said to me, State Department is supported, Department of Commerce, Exim Bank, Treasury, every arm of the US government, and including the Congress. The project is moving forward. The gas to energy project is moving forward. The loan shall be in place. And we'd already planned contingency should this not happen. We'd already planned contingency because we're a serious government. But the project is going well, but they had to urinate all on a good thing. That's what Kaichor does on any good news for the country, by speculation. I saw the same. The GHK Lal, I didn't deal with him too much a long time, and he looks at it. Travis Chase, the man who knows too much. Well, I think he is right about this. He claims that Travis Chase knows too much about the government. That is why somehow he knows what's happening that this doesn't happen in a democracy, attempts to assassinate Travis Chase, etc. Now, I don't want to comment on that. What took place? The police are dealing with this matter. But I believe that Travis Chase knows a lot about him, too much about GHK Lal. Because if you go to the stories, just Google when they got the gold license, a gold export license. G.H. Travis Chase and the others G.H.K. Lal was the head of the Gold Board, and he defended it. And when questions were raised about Travis Chase's past and due diligence, he brushed it aside. So I believe Travis Chase knows a lot about this G.H.K. Lal. He has more to worry about than the government of Guyana. Travis Chase could talk as much as he wishes. They're a free country. People know if Glenn Lal could cuss the government every day and prosper and get ads from the government and do well, Travis Chase doesn't come halfway to Glenn Lal's low standards. I've got to be careful about low life, but very low standards that he has established. It's just urinating all the time, these people on good ideas and raising conjecture and all of this. This is a major, major issue. So I'm not going to go on much except the last one on this here, because I can spend a week on these fake headlines in this Kaichor News. Nonsense, pure nonsense. We've had a whole year, another year of this. Another year of lies and fake headlines, all to promote probably the president, the candidates, Glenn Lal, who has political ambition. So one thing that is worth dealing with, because we've had a lot of noise about what took place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the subsequent statement by the Attorney General that that Maduro utilized a lot of the fringe stories from Guyana in his argumentations that this country was not, first of all, in Exxon's pocket and was destroying the environment. Now, if you recall, when I spoke in Essequibo, addressed the crowd several weeks ago, I said that we are a free country. We don't need Maduro or his vice president to tell us that the Exxon agreement is a bad one. We have said this openly, and we believe that criticism of the contract fall in the domain of fair comment in this country. And we will defend the right of people, Guyanese, to express their views robustly about the nature of this contract. That people in Guyana would not go to jail, as may happen in Venezuela, for comments that they make. Because we are a free country and we tolerate criticism. So we don't need him to tell us about the nature of the agreement. But as a free country too, that looks out for its sovereign interests, we can make our own judgments. We can make judgments about this sanctity of contracts and a judgment as to whether that would destroy or enhance the investment climate here. We can make judgments about the need for investments here and the magnitude of the investments. We can make judgment as to where the world is going in terms of net zero and decide to craft our own policy in the context of all of these variables. And having done so, we've decided that we wanted to change the PSA going forward We want to strengthen our laws to manage oil and gas sector going forward, which we have done. We wanted to strengthen our environmental permits, which we have done. We wanted to ensure that more is spent in our country through a law, which we have done, the local content law. We have deliberately set out to get more benefits from the existing contract through the gas to energy project, to cheaper, reliable electricity, which would benefit people as well as our business. They will save $100 million US a minimum per year in savings because of a 50% cut in electricity prices. Guyanese will save that. That's over $20 billion, and the project can self-finance itself because of the sale of the liquids. We have made those judgments ourselves, and we decided that Exxon, we're not going to renegotiate the contract. It's a sovereign decision of an independent state acting within and exercising its sovereignty in the 83,000 square miles of land and the 200 miles limit in our exclusive economic zone. We have done that. So we don't have a problem with criticism. It is the fringe, and we will always defend criticism or fair comment here. You never hear this government tell a reporter or a news entity that you can't do this only for the sake of patriotism. We hope that patriotism resides in the heart of all of our Guyanese. So when and our people, so that when they write stories, they don't do so that give benefit to our enemies. But so it's not that sort of comment that anyone worries about, the thought through, rational comments. It's the fringe elements, it's the fringe again. So when someone says that we're causing global warming by pouring hot water in the ocean, you can expect Delcia Rodriguez, who I don't think understands this issue much, to repeat it. Or when someone tries to block, a fringe group files a case to block oil and gas production in Guyana, claiming we're causing global warming, when our emission is just such a tiny, almost it's negligible fraction of global emissions. When somebody speaks about flaring in Guyana, every day about flaring in Guyana, and we have a zero flaring policy when the world is trying to get to zero flaring by 2030, the big companies, and we have zero flaring already, and they have to pay a tax for it. It's the lies. And when they go and try to block the gas to energy project, saying it will blow up people's homes and do all sorts of things and contaminate the area. Venezuela knows how many pipelines are crisscrossing Venezuela. And every country in the world, the US, they keep building pipelines every day, crisscrossing to supply people with gas, etc. And here, we mustn't get this 12 inches pipeline. It would destroy all the people there in the West Coast. It's that sort of nonsense we're talking about. It's this sort of nonsense that crazy people around the world would use. It's not about, when the Attorney General said people should be a little careful, he didn't mean we're going to shut down the media or anything like that. All of this big hullabaloo about his comments is to detract from the real issue that some of the most vociferous critics of what he said have been the ones who have been promoting these extremist views. Not journalism, not fair comment, but the extremist views about this. We will defend, the PPP has a history of defending media, even when we robustly criticize them. We have a view of defending their right to speak, and that was always prevail. So it's a storm in a teacup that they're trying to raise as though somehow we are anti-national and all of that, and that we're too thin-skinned, we want to shut down press freedom. It's far from the truth. I see a couple more issues. On the audit report for 2022, there are some stories circulating. And I spoke with the Minister of Finance, and he is assured that he is going to personally take action, corrective action, against any adverse finding. We see the audit report as a tool for management, and that's how we are approaching it. You recall the audit reports of the past that we are now considering, because in the 5 years of APNU, none were considered. You know, they didn't even touch the audit reports. They didn't make the light of day. So now we're saying we still have 700 million, nearly 600 and something million missing from the Durban Park project. Nothing done there. Millions missing from these funds that they were used to buy tickets for some shows, etc. A long list of things. We don't approach it this way. We will take corrective action. On NISIL, I see that report that the investor did an interview with the Starbuck News, and he complained about the slope. Once the bid was out, as I said before, we left it to NISIL and their lawyers to deal with the negotiations at the technical level. Let me just say that we want the matter concluded, but the executive will not intervene unduly into a technical process unless we believe that something is not being addressed to the satisfaction and to the probity of, or to the satisfaction of the original bid. Now, let me make it clear that this company put in a bid. They have to remain faithful to the bid. And our negotiators have to ensure that this country's interests are protected in those negotiations. That the original concept of the bid is reflective in the signed agreements to conclude the sale. That's all I'm going to say at this point in time. NISIL will issue a press release. In the negotiations, we're bound by a confidentiality clause, but we're not rushing anything to satisfy, because there's no desperation for money from this deal. The asset remains 100% government. We went out to tender. We want the agreement concluded, but it must be concluded in a manner that would reflect public scrutiny and scrutiny by the audit office. That's all I want to say at this stage on that issue. I see my friend Rickford Burke finally being served with some summons to appear in court. Now, everyone knew in this country that when he started acting up, the PPP sent 2 gunmen to go after him in New York, that something was afoot. He didn't tell people that he was served. So I saw a lot of speculation about why. First, personally, I did not believe anything he said. He can't be believed. This is a guy prone to fantasy and making up stories. So I think he went outside the precinct, said he reported it to the FBI, and went outside the police precinct to take some pictures of the police car and stuff like that. A total liar, no credibility whatsoever. Then I saw speculations that he may not have paid for services rendered, and that was one of the reasons he got into trouble with individuals. And then it came to light that finally the police managed, with the help of a service agent in the US, to serve him with these summons. So now, then I realized why he's been getting like so frantic and doing 100 lives a day, etc. Because the trial can now proceed in absentia. If he doesn't come to Guyana to face trial. And these are serious matters. Extortion, I don't see how he can get out. From all that we know in the public domain, he was part of this plot to extort people, as well as many other issues for which he is charged. So I think it is the police force should be commended, and I hope that a lot of people who believe that they can seek to destroy our country, or social harmony, or spread discord here, or extort people for money in this country, that the arms of the law will eventually reach them. So it's a good thing for those who believe they are safely, established in another country, and every day spread the most vile things about our country and try to divide our people along ethnic lines or racial lines, etc., that they will someday face the music. And so Rick Furberg, expect him to go into overdrive. And by the way, from what I gather, they have video evidence of him being read the summons, so he's going to, and running away after reading, being approached by the people. He ran and jumped in his vehicle, I'm told, and tried to run away from the people. But all of that will surface a little bit later. So finally, got caught up with. I'm going to end here. This week was, and once again, let me, before I come back, wish everyone a Merry Christmas. I'm sorry I had to, this week, I didn't touch the kite show news for a long time. There are lies and stuff like that, so I needed to tackle them this week. Yes, please.
Dr. Jagdeo, the citizens of Guyana have recently found Glenn Lal, and by extension Kaichor News, and have been calling him to some extent a traitor. It has reached to the level where there has been a decrease in paper sales, suggesting that people dislike the unpatriotic attitude of Glenn Lal. The PPP and yourself have taken a stance and have stood up for press freedom, but continue to spend taxpayers' money on an entity, or give it to an entity that creates mischief among Guyanese. How do you answer that?
On the face of it, people would say, why do this? it doesn't make sense because you're helping to finance a paper that is hell-bent on creating greater turmoil in our country, that often is unpatriotic, and that spreads lies, is dedicated to spreading lies. That it's moved from being a newspaper to a propaganda arm of a political aspirant. So, on the face of it, it's a valid criticism. But when you're in government, I think you have to be a bit more careful about these matters. They would play the victim. They would play the victim if anything, like you were to withdraw ads from the Skychor News, which I don't believe we should. We should not withdraw ads. They would play the victim, and then it's almost a judgment call, because I believe the best way of addressing this is by the citizens themselves. They have to make a determination that they're not going to spend their money paying for lies and for paying to sustain a political campaign sheet, and I was going to call it a fact sheet, but a non-fact sheet for a political aspirant. It's up to the citizens of this country. They have that ultimate choice. And really, when I listen to the analysis or look at the analysis, it's so shallow. I don't know. If I read a paper, I can in like 3 minutes, not 3 minutes, 30 seconds, tell you what all the stories would be just by looking at the headline. It's so predictable. You don't get anything new. It's all old stories rehashed, different angle, getting a Christopher Ram or somebody else, a G.H.K. Lal to go and just say the same thing over and over again. I don't know if there's something like, if people like punishment, that's a place to go. I can imagine you going to hell and finding the Kaichor News there and the devil giving you that to read as punishment. That is how it is. That's punishment that will give you, say, here, you have to read this every day of your life. And that would be a tragedy. People probably want to face the fire and brimstone ahead of reading that. So, to end the story short, it's not by cutting ads.
Dr. Jagdeo, there was a lot of tensity in this country before the agreement at Argyle. You have just spoken about capacity building in the defense area. What would that look like in the future in light of the fact that the tensity that we had in this country was second to none, although we have it election times. We had 5 months of despair in this country. The recent despair or the darkness that was over Guyana was of levels, basically never experienced before. What would capacity building in the defense sector look like?
So we made it clear that we were going to St. Vincent in good faith. Many of our friends in CARICOM and in South America, they wanted a reduction in tension. They wanted to keep our region as a zone of peace. Many countries are aware that the growing tensions, all caused by Venezuela, through its referendum and then by decree trying to annex our country, would have had consequences far beyond our borders. We have seen recently Lloyd put our country on a risky list. So once that happens in your region, it could affect shipping costs and a whole range of other costs in your region. Last week I dealt with it. Investments, insurance premium, I dealt with. That was even before the Lloyd's issue came out. I spoke about how it could affect insurance premium and also interest rate, the cost of credit. So no doubt there, everyone wants the region to remain a zone of peace because we benefit from that globally. So we went to St. Vincent, determined to hold to our position that one, the ICJ process is going to be preserved and we will pursue it to its conclusion, notwithstanding what the Venezuelans' position is. And that became very clear. That was the conclusion of the agreement. That there is no room now for any a return to the bilateral engagement on that particular matter. But there are several issues that could be discussed at the bilateral level that are outside of that single issue. And an openness to have those discussed because they can serve to lower tension, promote a greater understanding between the two countries. So I've seen, so that has helped a lot to reduce the tensions here, and some self-inflicted because a lot of people acted in an unpatriotic manner. What you were saying, the front headline, giving it to Maduro, like in the newspaper in Kaichor News. The front page gave Maduro the headline. It helped to raise a lot of tensions here, as well as many people circulating Venezuelan propaganda. But so that caused a major increase in tension here, but this abated a bit after the agreement. We made it clear in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that our engagement with our international partners to build capacity of a defensive nature, that we don't plan to attack any country, because one of Maduro's points to the leaders of CARICOM that somehow we were planning to attack him. So we made it clear we are not planning to attack Venezuela or any other country for that matter, but we will continue to pursue defense cooperation with our allies purely in a defensive capacity to ensure that our country is capable with our partners of defending itself. So that will continue. We will have to increase our investments in the military, but our investments are of a purely defensive nature, and we had long planned this, and we have already started implementing this. Like the key issue when we found out that we were losing over $100 million per year in illegal fishing in our exclusive economic zone, we made commitments to make sure that we can purchase radar capability and other capability, as well as interceptor capability. But it wasn't done for going to war with Venezuela. It's policing our exclusive economic zone and exercising sovereignty over our exclusive economic zone and the 83,000 square miles of our country. So that process will continue, but as I said before, it's not to attack Venezuela or anyone else. It's purely defensive, in a defensive capacity. So whilst we signed the agreement, we still have to ensure that we continue at this task.
Dr. Jagdeo, a lot of times at these press conferences and when things are happening in this country, it seems that yourself and this government have a layback approach. Let me go back to Rickford Burke recently suggesting that PPP operatives armed stormed his house. You're just saying a member of the Guyana Police Force went to America. This is actually a statement from the Guyana Police Force, and hired an organization that deals with serving. Obviously, because America is being so advanced, they would record these things and so on. You're saying there's a recording. Why hasn't the Guyana Police Force come out to clear up these aspects? Why are they waiting for yourself and the PPP to be stained to an extent where the explanation, when it comes long after, it serves no purpose?
Yeah, but people, it just goes to the credibility. Now, I'm in favor of full disclosure by the police and everyone else. However, these are there are legal implications to all of these issues too. So no doubt, Rickford Burke, he's a coward. He's a pure coward, scared of coming to this country and facing accountability for all that he's been saying. He believes that he's safe in the U.S. He will try to distort what took place. At the appropriate time, I think it will be revealed to the court, and maybe even before, if the police chooses to do that, that he was properly served so that the trial could go ahead. Rickford Burke claimed that the PPP sent 2 gunmen after him. He's made 1 million of these claims. Every day he says the most extreme things about the PPP. And only the people who are as crazy as he is would ever believe that. So nobody believes this one-man organization. By the way, he sued Gail Tisherin, the Attorney General, for saying that he has a one-man organization. Well, I would go forward and say it's a half-man organization he has. So he could sue me too, right, Rickford Burke? He wants to sue people from the U.S. Well, he could sue me too. But this guy is a conman. He's a conman, and he will try to steer people away. Like nobody believes him now because he didn't tell them he was served. He didn't tell them he was served. And when the police revealed that, then they realized why he was so shrill and had all these antics the whole week. Why he was running mad and running outside and taking pictures of police car and posting them. Scared. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Guyana Chronicle. I know that you mentioned a lot of focus is being placed on fulfilling promises. With that being said, could you give us an update on the part-time job initiative? And if you can you say how many persons were hired this year?
I don't know this year, but now the total should be around 15,000 persons. The total should be that around that. A lot of people left and a few were rehired because a lot of people were studying through the Gold Scholarship Program. They had the part-time job, they were studying. When they finished their degree, they moved on. Many of them found jobs. A lot of people found jobs, permanent jobs, and moved off. So it's been, we've had some people leaving and a few others that came on. So that's the purpose basically of it, to give people like a stepping stone to a more permanent type of job. So it's about 15,000 people. Yes. please.
Dr. Jagdeo, Shervin with Kaichor. Just for some clarity on what you said about the Christopher Ram article, if ExxonMobil is recovering billions of dollars from a producing oil project to explore and develop other projects, shouldn't Guyana be considered as investors too? For some clarity on what you said about the Christopher Ram article earlier on. If ExxonMobil is recovering billions of dollars from producing oil project to explore and develop other projects, shouldn't Guyana be considered as investors too?
The thing is that, so if you, I don't see a head in government. I don't see a single head where it says that the government is taking a loan to invest in any of these activities or anything else. Right? So that's it. That's how I approach it. I don't see a single head. If Christopher Ram could point this out, where we're financing this from, this investment in the oil and gas production, then he's free to do that.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking this question, just for a little bit more clarity, if I understand, you may correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand ring fencing correctly, had ring fencing meaning...
Listen, the thing is that if the agreement, we keep going back to this ring fencing by projects. The Stabroek Block Agreement covers all of the projects that are developed through this agreement. So that is the key issue that they can't get through their heads. So that is the thing. You have a choice to now, one, stop future projects, which I dealt with already. The consequences of doing that is that you can't expand production in this period when you need to do so as swiftly as possible. Or alternately, you get a bit more money now, you stop them, you get a bit more money now, but then you don't grow your production into the future. It's as simple as that. That's a deliberate choice of this government, rationally made. Not by a Christopher Ram who has no day-to-day responsibility. Christopher Ram writes 3 contradictory articles every day. And I don't know if we've seen his comment. He thinks, anyhow, shouldn't go off on what he said recently, because I want to say to him, if he believes that Indo-Guyanese are cowards, that's what he said, Indian people are coward. I'm Indo-Guyanese, I'm not coward. He might be, because I heard him said that. He sounds like a Manza Walton. So this guy every day contradicts everything. I know some of the companies, they're against stability clauses. Some of the companies he works for might be engaged, might have some bad agreements too, might have some really bad agreements with the government. I don't see him advocating any change there. I'm not wasting my time behind him. I thought he was more sensible until I heard this guy ranting, showing off in front of students, because he has nobody there to challenge him. And he's a coward to do it in front of the children there, because he had a captive audience, and the kids there were scared that he would probably give them bad grades if they challenge him. But it was a vile thing. I didn't get a chance. I stayed away from it until now. I see him commenting on me, what I should do. What he should have done is shut his mouth in front of the students. That's what he should have done, and not be such a coward.
Okay, a second.
Yes, so I've dealt with that. I'm dealing with a macro issue. When we decide, if we decide to renegotiate, then you can deal with all the component parts. You're dealing with the component parts, and you're not dealing with the agreement, the whole agreement. Yes, please, go on.
Marcel Thomas, the Starbuck News. This week, yourself and the President met with retired General Wesley Clark.
Yes.
understand that it's on invite of the government that he came. Is he going to be hired here? In what capacity?
No, we had a good meeting with General Clark. There will be no formal decision taken as to whether he'd be hired or not.
Okay. And the...
But he is a solid person. You know, he was head of Southcom, head of NATO, and former U.S. presidential candidate, and very, very knowledgeable person.
So we're mulling an advisory...
No, my position, no. Take no formal decision.
The next one is the loan from the U.S. Exim Bank. You said it's ready. When is it going to be disbursed?
So I said, no, they have to go through a process. Normally, when you apply for a loan, the agency does its own internal assessment of the engineering. It's like if you borrow money from any bank. If you go to the World Bank, IMF, etc., they have to be assured that that it's a sound project. They've had, the consultants were hired by Exim Bank. They've been doing their work. They're about to complete their work, most likely in January. Thereafter, it has to go through a process. It will have to go to the board, and then it will go through, I think it's about 45 days of notification of Congress, and then thereafter, they can final board approval. So it is a process. People think that when you make an application, it's immediate. These internal processes take some time. But I told you, from the president of the Exim Bank, the vice president of the bank, Department of Commerce, State Department, every U.S. agency, including on a bipartisan basis, members from both sides of Congress, have assured us that this project is a great project. It will receive their full support. So it's just that you have to go through the technical process.
It hasn't been formally approved.
No, but it's on the way. It is, for you to get the formal approval, you have to follow a process. You have to follow a process, because the headline, you're looking for a headline, it has not been formally approved. It hasn't even gone to the board. How would it be formally approved?
I'm looking for a headline. Why you tell me why I'm looking for? I'm looking
Right,
for
so that's it. I don't want you to put has not been formally
No,
approved.
I just want to know that
It
you
is.
had the assurance that it would be
The assurance,
approved.
yes, the assurance.
Okay. We have seen a trend, Dr. Jagdeo, in the mining sector where companies come to Guyana, they receive large mining concessions, and then they flip those concessions, sell it to somebody else, and then walk away. Another company is heading down the same path. Recently, we see a Canadian company sell part of its stake to an American company. How does Guyana benefit from these transactions? Are we getting any benefit when they flip these concessions?
So unless Kaichor News is rewriting the manual for global finance and global economics, if you look at the U.S., every day you have mergers and acquisitions. If you just go to Bloomberg, just turn on Bloomberg and look at it, 100 companies per day. This is a constant thing. It's the world of business. That's how you work in that world. We are not a Stone Age country now. So when people invest in proving reserves, a lot of people are ultimately not the investors. They may acquire the concessions. They have what is a standard agreement with the government of Guyana. They invest in proving the reserves. Then they may list the company in an exchange abroad in Canada or the US, or work through a bilateral arrangement, and then have other companies buy in to that. The original investors, the ones who come in at the beginning, who have gone through the entire process, securing the agreement, etc., they then they make some money because the project has moved from a barren piece of land now with 50 million US spent on saying they have 1 million ounces of gold now, proving the reserves, doing boreholes, establishing that. So now they may sell it. What we have is the original agreement. The original agreement says for anyone who comes to develop the project ultimately, they will get X concessions, but they have to pay the corporate tax, like in mining, they have to pay corporate tax, and they have to pay 8% royalty, which is, we change upwards. From $5 up to $1,000, beyond 1,000 it goes to 8% royalty. So whoever develops the project have to still give the government of Guyana, pay their taxes to the government of Guyana, and pay the royalty from which we get our revenue. So the investor may change, but that's a normal thing of business, global business. Look at Hess and Chevron. They're now facing an FTC probe, but they has sold out the company to Chevron because part shares and part cash, and Hess sits on the board now. So this happens routinely. Kaichor News counts everybody money. Glenlal doesn't count the things that he does. They count everybody money in the country. Who making money here, who not making money, etc. So why didn't anybody, local person, can apply for the mining blocks too? The majority of the mining lands now in Guyana are owned by local companies. They have the option of developing a project like that too and taking it to the final production. They have that. The majority of the lands are owned by local companies. So go ahead.
Okay, just to touch on, you mentioned that you were grateful that citizens reprimanded. Well, the discussion was over that some of Kaichor News' article on the oil sector is being used by Maduro, right? But while you...
No, but I don't have a problem if you write about the oil sector. Even if it's a lie, you got a right to write it. I'll say that publicly. You got a right to write it. People don't have a right. They shouldn't read it. They shouldn't read it. People have choices. A free country. I'm not going to tell you to beg Kaichor News to stop writing lies. But sometimes it's just extreme. It's extreme.
But my question is, when the PP was in opposition and was, describing this said oil contract as a bad one in disparaging terms, couldn't this be considered as a contribution to...
But you just heard what I said at the beginning. I said, in Essequibo, long before St. Vincent, I said, we've been critical. Why are you criticizing Exxon, Maduro, and Delcio Rodriguez? We have been saying that. We said it in opposition, but because we are a free country. So we are not opposed to anybody. You heard me say that here, criticizing the ExxonMobil contract or ExxonMobil in Guyana. They should respond. The unfortunate thing is they don't respond enough. So when it gets mischaracterized, we end up having to respond. And then it looks like we're defending them. We're not defending ExxonMobil. We're defending Guyana and the sovereign state of Guyana. When we go abroad to argue for a nuanced approach or a just transition, we're not supporting Exxon global production of oil. We're saying our country should be allowed to produce because if you have to cut in those countries that have been producing for 50 years, 100 years, and who are still growing their production, and the poor countries of the world, If you need 20 million barrels per day by 2050, then Guyana, Ghana, Mozambique, Angola, Suriname should be the ones producing it. Why should these big countries? We're not defending Exxon there. We're defending our country's interests when we argue that way. And sometimes that nuance is lost on the Kaichor news. It's similarly how the nuance is lost on what they said about Copenhagen and now COP28. The nuance is lost. The world is made up in these complex issues with a series of, you have to understand the complexity and the nuances. Yes. So that's the problem.
Okay, can you provide an update on the production activities at Payara? Like how many barrels are currently being produced? And are we on target for 620,000 barrels by the end of...
You know my views on that. When the minister deals with that, send a note to the ministry if they have 13.4 barrels or 12.5 barrels and stuff like that. I don't deal with that sort of thing. I deal with policy.
Okay, no problem.
Every day the number changes. They're supposed to get reports of a consistent nature on production. They get those reports. I hope that they're putting up those reports on their website, because the ministry was given instruction to put up the figures on their website. The figures should be there. Go there and check the figures.
Okay, my final question. From the oversight perspective, can you say how the 7.3 billion audit that was done by the local consortium is progressing? And how soon will the government seek companies to conduct audits for the following years?
We are going well all the time, and then you drag me back into all of those things. You've heard me already about this audit and all of that. GRA, I'm not commenting on those issues. You know, you want the politicians to get their fingers in everything, which is what we're trying to avoid. There's room for technical people here too. The same thing with Marriott. We got to let our technical people work first, and then at the end of the day, then we get involved. Yes, please.
Dr. Jagdeo, Antonio Day, Starbuck News. I have a question. In relation to you mentioning the audit report of 2022, you noted that the finance minister is expected to take corrective actions. I wanted to know, would you be able to expound on what these corrective actions would be?
No, but wherever, for example, if a book has not been written, for example, the audit office says, we have not seen the vouchers for this expenditure, then obviously the minister has to bring in the REO and say, where are the vouchers? To now take it to a different level. If you can't produce the vouchers, then two courses of action. You got to give an explanation. If the explanation is not plausible, as the accounting officer for the region, you face consequences. Financial consequences, or it could be referred to the police. One of the two, if he finds that it's adverse. So that sort of action I expect.
Okay, and going back to COP28, I know that you would have expressed disappointment at some of the issues not being addressed, such as incentivization of the carbon credits and all that. I wanted to know, going forward, as we go to COP29, COP30, does the government foresee going to these meetings? Because based on what you said, that is the same thing that happened in Copenhagen, and several of the issues were not addressed. Yeah. So does the government consider going back to the drawing board and thinking about how these mechanisms can be devised?
Yeah. So we're one of many countries, as I explained before. COP means Conference of Parties, and the countries are the parties, and they have a principle that you have to have unanimous approval before you agree on text. So you can have, at COP, you can have a lot of positive things happening. So the pledge to increase renewables threefold is a great pledge. The pledge by some oil companies to end flaring, it is a great pledge. But they don't have, it's voluntary. So lots of good things can happen at COP. But the agreement has been moving forward fairly slowly and in increments. You can't give up on it. So the last agreement now, they never had any language on fossil fuel. There was a big expectation that there would be, or a lot of people are calling for phasing down or phasing out fossil fuel. That didn't happen. The agreement they had was to seek to transition from fossil fuel. Weak language, but it mentioned fossil fuel for the first time. Some countries saw that as great progress. First time fossil fuel has been mentioned. Others see it as, well, it's kicking the ball down the road because it's voluntary up to now. So you have to be at these places. You have to constantly work with like-minded groups to look out for the global interest, but also your national interest. And then parallel to that, like what we are doing, ensuring that the lack of a framework agreement of a nature that will support net zero and hold people accountable does not impede your ability to tackle climate change and its consequences for your country. That means adaptation here, nor your ability to raise finance using your assets that could be deployed as mitigation tools for climate change. And so that is precisely what we have done. We have been a part of the global community fighting robustly, but we have a national strategy. And I must say, people should be proud of it. You know, most countries don't have that. They don't have a low carbon development strategy. We launched one in 2009 when that was not a thing to do. Now they're saying the world should have low carbon development strategies, every country. We expanded ours. We acted upon it. We've raised a large sum of money already. We're financing adaptation. We're tackling indigenous people development. We're a model. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, NASA Kaichu News. I'm going back a little to the issue of remittance. As you explained, the report mentioned the use of remittances. However, it did not say anywhere what percentage of the funds remitted to Guyana went towards investment capital. And if, as you claim, your internal data is showing differently in terms of figures, can you give us a breakdown of two things? One, how much funds were remitted? And secondly, what percentage was used for investment?
So you already gave a false headline, and then you want me now to tell you the breakdown. Why don't you go and examine the same World Bank report? The World Bank report. But so if you go to the balance of payment figures, you will see some disaggregation, and you will also see the total investment sums. Let me just get some. Let me see if the governor, because it's just today I was preparing this. When I saw it, I look at the headlines. So our figures are actually, so 2023, January to September 2023, significantly, the workers' remittances are $306 million they have net, on a net basis. But it's actual $853 million of net remittances to the country, or in our current transfers. So if you go to the BOP figures, you could easily get the details from me. I just have them here. I don't want to. read them out. I was just looking through this matter. Go to the balance of payment figure, which should have been done when you're writing a story of this nature. When you see something, you have to then say, let me cross-check this with the national figures. So it should be the BOP. Let me check the BOP. Then what does this article really mean, the report? Does the report really mean that it's money to eat? Because that's what the headline says. Or could this mean anything else? The article says it's a source of investment. So why don't we call Go Invest and ask them how much of it is investment? Do you have Guyanese who are living abroad who are investing here? That sort of thing would have been a balanced article to write. I'm not saying you, but the Kaichor News wrote the Jaundice article. And you're coming to me now, having written it, to ask you to deal with what should essentially be your research if it was a balanced article. You understand what I'm saying? It's the research that makes them good article. That says, okay, here are all the variables, and then the government is really duping us. When you can argue that if you're supported by all the facts. We're not against scrutiny. We're just saying let it be a little bit more in-depth and all-encompassing. Yes.
EITI now requires countries to verify production data from all mining companies. Can you say if and what are the systems that Guyana currently has in place to monitor its gold, diamond, and other mining sectors? And if there aren't any that are stringent, quote unquote, can you say how fast we can have those implemented?
Yeah, so we've had a positive report. This thing would be incremental. It goes in increments. And so our system is much more transparent than the other systems. Many countries that are part of EITI, we have had a fairly decent tracking system for the gold because we have licensed a few dealers. Do we have leakages? There is a current investigation ongoing as to whether we have leakages because people can dupe even the system. So I wouldn't say anything adverse about the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. After the issue of not having the report done on time, there have been a lot of improvement in the working relationship between the government and the EITI. And I'm looking forward to us strengthening the systems all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.